I'm ready.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. A few logistical things. We want this to be as interactive as possible. This is going to be approximately about a 45-minute presentation. We will have questions and answers towards the end of the presentation. Please feel free to ask the questions in the chat box as you think of them. And we are going to do several polls. We're actually going to do 3 polls today. And they're going to, if you've never done polling before, it's going to appear on your screen. You're going to have to submit so that we can see everybody's answers. All of the answers are going to be anonymous. I had met Camille Steele from Lawyers Mutual Consulting last year. We were doing the Atlanta Legal Tech, I guess it was a seminar of some sort, and we instantly connected, and I knew that she would be a great resource for many of my law firm colleagues and also for many of the law firms that I do work with. And she has been that wonderful resource for me. And as we're transitioning through and experiencing COVID, we realized that a lot of law firms and a lot of businesses in general aren't necessarily or weren't necessarily thinking about planning for their succession. But in light of COVID and in light of what our businesses are experiencing and the law firms are experiencing, people are starting to realize that there is that they may be experiencing mortality or thinking about their own mortality. And we wanted to bring this presentation to you so that we can first act as a resource for you to bounce ideas off of. And then also, I know some of you are advisors here, some of you are business owners, and then some of you are also, attorneys and law firms. So we want to help you think through that process and give you practical strategies in planting the seeds and thinking of what you need to do, both from a legal perspective, but also from a practical perspective when you're thinking about planning for succession. The seminar will also address both solo and small firms, but the concepts are going to be general enough that any business owner that you may be advising or that you know of should be thinking about and should be starting to think about that process. And what we want to emphasize to you today is that succession planning is definitely a process. You need to plant the seeds. You need to be comfortable with the ideas that we're going to discuss today. And it can't and it shouldn't happen necessarily overnight. So I want you to close your eyes and think of if you've ever hired a contractor or know of somebody who's ever hired a contractor. Now, the contractor shows up at your door. He knocks on the door and he's like, okay, I'm going to come and I'm going to fix your house. But he doesn't have a plan. You haven't discussed, what the foundation is going to look like, how many windows are going to be in your home, how many, whether or not it's going to be a ranch or a split level, or what the square footage is. And so when you're thinking about businesses in general, and then also law firms, think about the anxiety that would cause. You have all of these things where you need to have a home to live in, but that, you don't necessarily have a plan. And so the fear is, for many businesses, and especially law firms, is that a lot of law firms are experiencing this the same way, where they don't have a plan and they don't know where to start. They don't know what the actual foundation is. And so many businesses are running into this. And so I want you to also start thinking about and putting here, and maybe putting it in the chat box, why do you think succession planning is important? And then if you want to put that in the chat box, in the Q&A, or, these are some of the things that we are thinking about. And Camille, jump in whenever you want to, but, You know, some of the things that I think about as an estate planning attorney and a business succession planning attorney is the legacy. What kind of legacy do you want to leave for your family members, for your business owners, and legacy in terms of community? Another issue is, and Camille will discuss this more, but, continuity of client care. You want to maximize the value of your law firm. You want to minimize disruption. And then you also want to control, as most business owners do, you want to control the terms of when you're actually going to retire and how you're going to exit the business. And specifically for lawyers who, you're always thinking as a lawyer, okay, what is going to happen, or for your clients? But how about starting to think about what is going to happen for you? And then also thinking in terms of personal time and family.
And I think Tana mentioned a great one in the chat, maximizing the value of the business that was created. And I think that's a great one to keep in mind as well. So thank you.
Yes, definitely. And like any planning situation with any of my business owners, you want to maximize the value of your business because, as Tana, she's a financial advisor. You want, as an advisor, you want to make sure that the business that you have worked so hard for, and you establish this long-term relationship with your business clients, that they maximize that value so that they can leave a legacy or that they can be comfortable in their retirement. And so the objectives of this presentation, we want you to start thinking about the timeline of when you should start planning. We also want you to think about the personal and emotional considerations of actually doing the succession planning. And Camille is great with this. She's worked with a lot of law firm owners who may have some challenges with wrapping their head around of, what am I going to do next? Fundamentally, what am I going to do next? Is there enough money and for retirement and resources? And then I'm going to talk about the legal considerations for transition and what are the fundamental things that you need to think of as a business owner and as a law firm that you should have in place. Okay, and so in thinking about this, so this is our first poll, and does your firm or the firms that you advise have a succession plan? And I'm just waiting on here. Okay, so now what we're looking at is from the results of the poll, about 83% of the people that you advise or yourself, they don't have a succession plan. And I think that's why this presentation is really needed, because this is something that's coming up. And as we're doing this, we have to think also in terms of the mass exit of baby boomers who are transitioning out of the workforce or thinking about planning for retirement. And what is that going to look like? And how can we make that as easy as possible? And then, so for the second poll, this is the next poll that we have, is, I can do this part, not sure, but I guess I'm having technical difficulties, but what age do you or your clients have an age in which you plan to retire? In speaking with some of my older clients, they are either in their early 60s late 50s, and they're starting to think about retirement. The retirement age now is 65 to 67. And so they're starting to think about times that they want to, spend more time with the grandchildren, spend more time with their family members or their spouse. And so if you can put in the chat box, what age do you think that, people are retiring? Oh, 55. Okay, Brian. So you want to retire when you're 55. Does that mean you want to completely stop working? That's awesome. Okay, 60. Okay. And you're right, Tana. It is how much, it depends on, David's hilarious. Some of my clients die at the desk. Most are mid 60s. I mean, you never want to die at the desk if that's not the intended plan. For some people, you're right. The intended plan is to just continue working, but you can shape the way that you look at that plan for other, for your business owners and for yourself. Okay.
So, one of the things I would add on to that is I do talk to so many of my clients who say, I do plan to die at my desk, or, as Lisa says, I plan to work as long as I can as a solo. And, what I would say that I see happens is the work as long as I can means that they don't have a plan, because working as long as you can doesn't in itself is not a plan. And that is also a good way to find yourself in that situation where you're not able to capitalize on the firm value, create legacy, create client continuity, because you end up being so much more reliant on good luck, and disaster can happen. So I really love it when I hear people start talking about planning for retirement in their mid 50s to mid 60s, because I talk with many, many lawyers in their 70s who are still not willing to start having serious conversations about retirement. What I would say about the numbers here is there are 1.3 million active lawyers in the U.S., according to the ABA's most recent survey. And they estimate that 400,000 of those lawyers are 62 years old and older. And 30 to 40% of practicing lawyers are at an age and stage where they're either beginning to think about retirement or they should be thinking about retirement. So that's a lot of people. And what I often see happen is that partner who will walk in the firm, and most of my clients are solo small firms. And so I'm talking about like a partnership with 3 partners or 4 partners. And that partner walks in the door and says, I'm going to retire in 3 months, which is really a winding down of the practice, right? And what that is going to mean for the remaining partners, if this statistic is correct, that 63% of law firm partners 60 and older control a quarter of their law firm revenue, that means that a big chunk of the law firm revenue is going to walk out the door with no plan for how to hold on to any of that. And then this final numbers, 28% of law firms have succession plans. But what I'll tell you about that is that many of those are firms that have mandatory retirement ages. So I do talk to lawyers at large firms who say, oh yeah, we have a succession plan, when in fact they have a mandatory retirement plan, but they have a mandatory retirement age, but they have no plan for how they're going to transition leadership responsibilities, management responsibilities, or client relationships. So actually, they have no plan.
And so what I want to talk about here, and this is where I help a lot of business owners, And so I'm starting to talk to business owners and law firms as well too, about the legal foundation. And so when I work with my business client, we usually do a business audit. And so that's looking at everything. Do you have a business continuity plan? And it's a checklist of things where you start to identify potential issues in the structure of the firm. And so it could be everything from employment issues, which I don't necessarily deal with, but I want to know what the areas are that would be of concern in the future. And so when we're looking at the legal foundation of law firms, generally, most of the structures are going to be either in a partnership form, where it's a complete partnership form, or an operating agreement. And then we're looking at a buy-sell agreement. We have to think of a law firm as a business. And personally, myself, it was hard for me to think about it that way. As a solo practitioner, it's hard to think, okay, you want to be the best lawyer that you can be, but you also need to think of it as a business. And where can I think about profitability? Where can I build value so that at the end of the day, when I want to retire, 20 years from now, that someone will find it appealing enough and that there's enough value in my law firm to either sell it or to transition it to someone else. I need to be thoughtful about this. And when you start with law firm partners, in the beginning, usually what happens is, and what I have seen based on my experience, is that law firms will either haphazardly put together a operating agreement or a partnership agreement. And then they won't look at it for years. And so in terms of that, if we're looking at a partnership agreement, we need to think about what does that partnership agreement really entail? And when was the last time you reviewed your partnership agreement? And does it address concerns like death, disability, business, or actual divorce? And what happens to your partnership if any of those things happen? Another consideration is, does it achieve the desired goals? There's different law firms, and it's also going to discuss the equity. So when you're thinking in terms of a partnership agreement, it's a contract between partners. It's going to generally address the percentage of ownership, voting rights. Who's going to have say in what form, the profit and losses and the distributions of that, whether or not you are having annual meetings, quarterly meetings, and then generally, and which is an area that I have seen in reviewing partnership agreements, is it may briefly or not at all touch on buyout and buy-sell rules. When somebody is starting a law firm in the beginning, that is rarely addressed. And so in reviewing your own partnership agreements, carefully start to look at those things. What does it actually say? In general, when I work with a lot of businesses, they haven't looked at their partnership agreements for a while, or if at all. So usually what will happen is that some business owners will just have an attorney draft it, but they won't actually really look at the context and what it means. And then so for operating agreements, it's generally the same principles, but here you're in an LLC format. And a lot of law firms are moving to that model. So they're moving away from the partnership agreements and they're moving to an LLC model. And so the same principles apply, percentage of ownership, voting rights, profit and losses, and buyout and buy-sell rules. But you have to look at that LLC agreement and the operating agreement and see when was the last time you reviewed it. What does this mean for all of the shareholders of the firm? And do we need to make any changes? Because most of the time you do. Because some people won't even have a formal operating agreement between all of the partners. They will just they'll do their LLC with the state, but they won't necessarily have an operating agreement that spells out the death, the disability, the divorce, or any of these facets that we have on this slide. You know, the whole purpose of an operating agreement is to outline how the business handles financial and operational considerations. And it should be tailored to your specific business. It's a contract that binds all of the members. And so when some of the businesses that I work with and some of the law firms, they haven't necessarily looked at it or addressed that. So you just want to make sure that as a checklist going forward, and also when you're advising businesses, you know, look at their operating agreements, see what it says. And does the business owner or does the law firm understand what the consequences are of this operating agreement that they have signed that makes them, you know, it's a contract, so it binds them. I have seen a lot of issues with certain clients where they haven't really looked at the operating agreement, or they downloaded it from LegalZoom, or you know they didn't have an attorney really advise them on it. And as they're navigating and trying to, you know, obtain loans right now through the PPP, you know, this is the first time they're discussing actual capital contributions, or you know, additional contributions, or whether or not somebody needs to provide their personal information to secure an SBA loan. So these are real issues that you need to have in place and that you should be discussing if you are an advisor with your clients. So this is a big issue. It's a buy-sell agreement. And so when law firms come to me, they want to have something in place that is going to address death, disability, divorce, you know, what happens to their interests after, you know, if one of the partners gets divorced or if they file bankruptcy, you know, so all of that stuff is addressed generally sometimes in the operating agreement. But as firms evolve and they grow, they have additional partners that are joining. They want to have more of a buy-sell agreement. They want to make sure that that those issues, so you know, primarily death, what is that going to look like, and how is it going to impact the law firm? What kind of, because if there is no preparation, which I have seen sometimes, is that there's no planning, so there's no value that's built for the law firm. If there isn't a plan, generally, and with business owners, it becomes a fire sale where, you know, it's either going to go to a law firm for not as much value as they want it to be, or they're just going to have to close their doors. So there's three types of buy-sell agreements that you as a law firm or a business owner can consider. And so there first is a cross-purchase agreement. And in this type of buy-sell agreement, you know, the owners, the co-owners agree to buy out the exiting or deceased owner's share at a specific price. And so this is important because and we'll discuss this more, but you need a team of advisors to help you with this process. So it's either life insurance advisors, CPAs, financial advisors, consultants, but this isn't something that can happen overnight. The second is a redemption agreement. And in this type of buy-sell agreement, you know, the company buys the exiting or the deceased owner's share. The company is going to typically have a life insurance policy. And so this is where the life insurance agents or the financial advisors or will come into play for each owner. And they're going to use the money to purchase the deceased owner's share. And so that's a redemption agreement. And a hybrid agreement, which is what I use most often, depending on the circumstances with some small business owners and law firms, is we'll use a combination of both. Because some of my business owners can't get underwritten because of health issues or other issues, we have to become creative in what we can do to fund this buy-sell agreement. And so in this type of agreement, it requires the remaining owners and businesses to purchase the interest of the departing owner. But there's a lot of thinking that's involved with that, because I have been in certain instances where, you know, one of the partners can't get underwritten. So we have to become creative and work with the financial advisors to see what we can do from a business perspective to get to either find other solutions to fund that agreement. And then if you plan early, you can think about the tax advantages, and, you know, the businesses can buy the insurance. So it's not coming out of the pocket of the individual partner.
Let's think for a minute about viewing the situation from the client's perspective. And so, you know, I know one of the things that often happens with lawyers is they're so busy with their day-to-day managing the fires and the client needs and the emergencies that come up with the client needs, that they struggle with handling the business side. But in being a client-centered law firm, thinking about this from your client's perspective is really important. Your clients are worried about your succession plan. And, you know, I can speak from the perspective of working for a company that employs lawyers to handle legal work, right? You know, we think about the lawyers that we hire and what their plan is, and, you know, who's going to take over their work when they're not able to do it. So your clients are concerned about the loss of institutional knowledge about them, their business, or their matter if you retire. They're concerned about the personal relationships that they will lose. They may have a relationship with you, but with no one else in the firm. Clients don't want to pay for the cost of integrating new lawyers. And that can be problematic for both client and lawyer, right? The lawyer doesn't want to invest in training someone in a client's matter if the client doesn't want to pay for it. The client doesn't want to pay for training the new lawyer. So you can definitely see where that can cause problems. You can have a loss of goodwill among your clients. Your clients are worried about your ability to recruit and retain good talent if you don't have a plan in place and you're not talking about that plan. And then finally, it's just their peace of mind. You're having a succession plan and being transparent with your clients about what that plan looks like at the appropriate time. You know, I'm not suggesting that you tell your clients tomorrow that, you know, you're going to retire in 2 years, because I understand there's a worry that your clients might not stick around for that. But if you can talk with your clients about a plan and what the succession will look like and do it in the right time frame, then it provides your clients with a lot of peace of mind, and they feel better about you, and they feel better about your handling their matters. So whether you're a solo or in a firm, what can you do to prepare your firm for the future? How can you prepare for succession? I think that it's important that we identify and support young attorneys in our firms as they grow into their role within the firm. That can be through effective mentorship. That can be through over time as you begin to help them not just become a good lawyer in their substantive skills, but you begin to let them see aspects of law firm leadership and law firm management. I always tell lawyers it's really important the lens in which you view the folks that work for you. It is different to hire a young associate than it is to hire a next generation owner. So a lot of my clients will say to me, Camille, you just don't know how hard this is. You can't find good help. Millennials don't want to work. They're not as invested as I am. And one thing I will say is no one is going to be as invested in your business as you, right? It is your business. But if you are hiring a next generation owner, at some point, it's important to begin to train them in what ownership actually looks like. And I even suggest with some of my small firm owners that they don't wait until some magic 7 or 10-year period where they talk about equal partnership, but they begin to think about things like small partnership buy-ins over a period of time. So that at the 3-year or 4-year or 5-year mark, they actually have a vested interest in the business and seeing it succeed. And that gives them a different level of motivation. I think it's also important to recognize that many of our owners or our senior lawyers are the important rainmakers in our law firms. They're the ones who've been bringing the work in. They've got the client relationships. We've got to prepare our firm for the future by training our new lawyers in how to do that. And it's fine for you to be the one training them if you've kept up with how business development has changed over the years. But I know back when I started working in law firms, there was more work than we could do. And it was simply a matter of distributing work to all these eager young associates that we hired, right? They didn't have to worry about where to find the work. The work just showed up on their desk. And that's going to be very different today. So if you are able to train them in business development, or if not, send them to classes, hire a coach, bring in a consultant, have a lunch and learn, share war stories with how you got your best client and keep those relationships. It's important that we continuously develop talent. It's important that we begin to think in ways that the next generation owners think. Typically, law firms are, they're opaque. Everything is mine. The financial information is my information. The running of the business, all of that is my information, and I'm going to hold on to that. But this next generation of employees, of lawyers, of owners, they are interested in collaboration. They're interested in transparency. And they are going to want to see those things exhibited from you. And so if you want to be just a one generation law firm and you want to close down the doors when you're done, that is a perfectly fine choice. It's the choice many, many lawyers make. But if it is your hope and desire to get some value out of your firm that may help you through retirement, and you do want to think about selling your firm, there are some concessions that you're going to need to make at some point along the way as you begin to be more transparent about what being a law firm owner would look like. I have a lot of lawyers that I help them talk through this conversation and what it looks like. Sort of the days of the partners going into a room and taking a vote and coming out the next day and extending partnership offers, and people are sitting there, just waiting for that to happen. And it's like a gift that you bestow upon them, and they are all going to say yes to it. Like those days are gone. And so you first need to make sure that the people you're hiring, that this is actually something that they want. And they may not know that on day one, but certainly as they move into their career, these are conversations you need to be having with them on an ongoing basis, not simply a ta-da, you've made it, and I'm going to give you this gift in return for you giving me capital, and now I'll open, I'll unlock the secrets for you. It will look a little different for the next generation owner.
And one thing, Camille, I think you and I had in conversations was that you don't necessarily need to give them the blueprint, right? You don't need to, and so I think a lot of owners are concerned, and you and I had this discussion, that if you share, the law firm, then this younger attorney is going to run away with your practice model and then duplicate it. And so there is, this kind of lack of trust or, apprehension around that situation.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm not talking about giving away the keys to the kingdom, or, as Cherry said, the blueprint to your firm. I'm simply talking about ways to share more information. And when we get to our question and answer point, I can share, some examples of things that I've seen people do well. But I do want to mention, Anika has asked a question about when transitioning to the next generation owner, what type of financial payment arrangements work. And since we're getting ready to talk about our compensation model, I am going to go ahead and mention that. So the payments would be based on your firm valuation. So you would want to bring in someone, a business partner, a CPA, a financial planner, that, someone who is specialized in doing firm valuations. You would want to bring them in to do the valuation and to determine how much your firm is valued. And then you would want to work out what a buy-in plan would be. The buy-in plan could be a lump sum. It could be payments over time. It could be payments over time that would include your working with the firm and into your retirement, so that you would have some guaranteed income into retirement. And there are also now opportunities for lending opportunities for lawyers buying law firms. I think which we've seen for a long time in the medical world, but not so much in the legal world. It used to be that someone graduating from dental school could very easily go to a bank and get a pretty substantial loan to buy a dental practice. And there are definitely some differences, right, in buying a medical practice and a dental practice. A dental practice and a law practice. The percentage of clients that are going to stay or patients that are going to stay is extraordinarily high. That can be very different depending on, the kind of practice you have, the kind of clients you have, but there are financial models to look at all of that. But let's talk about evaluating your compensation model today so that you can work yourself towards retirement. And it includes these very important foundational pieces that Cherish was mentioning, like a well-defined partnership agreement, well-defined operating agreements, where you know what your contributions have been, when you know what your retirement plan is. So having well-defined agreements is important. If you haven't looked at your agreement in 20 years, you may find that it doesn't address that today, and that you are going to have to address that. Another thing you can do is offer compensation to lawyers who are successful in beginning the transition process. So, let's say that, you put a bonus structure in place for lawyers who begin to transition client relationships, who begin to transition projects to other lawyers, so they can both be rewarded for doing that and see a financial, benefit from that. You could double count receipts so that the new attorney is included in that. You could sunset origination fees. This idea that, this client was mine from the beginning of time until the end of time. You could begin to sunset those originations so they go to that next generation owner. And you can do that over time so that you're beginning to prepare yourself financially to, walk away from some of the money. Reduce your billable hour requirement, fund deferred transfer payments. Um, one thing I see happen a lot is a lawyer will come to me and say, I'm really interested in talking to my partners. Again, this small firm, 2 or 3 partners. I want to talk to my partners and see what they're willing to offer me in terms of a retirement. I go in and talk to the other partners and they say, we've been paying him retirement for the past 3 to 5 years. Already he's cut down his workload. Many of his clients have already retired. He's working at about 70% of his, capacity. He's still got the nicest corner office and we're letting him use that even though he's not, particularly productive. Yet he's taking home the same amount of compensation. So we think he's in his retirement phase. And now we're ready for him to just set a date when he's going to leave. And there won't be anything for him to take with him. We're not willing to now pay him to go home. And so there's this matter of expectations, and having a conversation way in advance helps you to not get to that point. And often what happens is these are great, solid relationships that begin to fray because of these difficult conversations at the very end of a career. And then one other key area of compensation is insurance considerations for retiring lawyers. And if you don't have a good insurance professional, you definitely need someone working with you, or talk to your financial planners about this. But there are things you need to be thinking about, like, disability income insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance. And then in the legal industry, we have malpractice insurance. And there is a product that's called tail coverage, or an extended reporting endorsement. That is what you tack on to your insurance when you retire, so that there's coverage for the mistakes that you might have made while practicing that don't come to light until after retirement. And that provides protection for you and your remaining law partners. So you're definitely going to want to check out all of those things. So the financial component of retirement is key. So how do we position our attorneys for a successful retirement? We know that there are lawyers who say, I want to die at my desk. They don't want to have these conversations. This same Altman-Weil survey that I mentioned earlier from 2013 says that, something like 64% of lawyers avoid talking about retirement because it is an uncomfortable topic. So how can we prepare them for success? I think the larger your firm, the bigger the process can be, right? So I know large firms that have, committees where, there are people who are looking at retirement issues. They are working on accountability. You join the committee when you reach a certain age. That might not be feasible in a solo practice or a 2 or 3 attorney practice, but certainly you can put this item on your partnership meeting, and it's something you can talk about. Even if your partners are all in their 50s, it's a great idea to put this on your annual retreat agenda, or at least 1 or 2 of your partner meetings a year. You can offer sessions, lunch and learns in your office, where you bring in people to begin talking about retirement. Bring in someone from your insurance plan to talk about, what is Medicare, Medicaid, my insurance going to offer me, when I stop work, at what age do I become eligible for these different options. Have someone talk to them about what Social Security looks like and how it works, and how to start figuring that out, how to start budgeting for retirement. And I think talking about life after law is particularly important. I talk to so many lawyers who say, I don't know what to do when I go home. my day has been structured for so long in this way. I don't know what to do away from the office. And I can tell you, my spouse doesn't want me at home underfoot. So bring in people from the community who can talk about community needs, serving on boards, second career opportunities like teaching at a law school, writing. Um, but I do think there are things that we can do collectively if we're in firms, or individual education if we're solos, to prepare ourselves for success in retirement. And then the important step with any plan is accountability. It's wonderful to build a plan, but if we then put the plan in a file cabinet and we never look at it again, it doesn't do us any good. So how are we going to be accountable? If you're in a firm, put someone in charge. Again, have a committee and have someone in charge. If you're a small law firm, but you have someone like an office administrator or a law firm manager, or a trusted paralegal who's been with you for a long time, maybe it's time to start talking with them about dates and to-do items and ask them to help with accountability. Maybe it's your financial planner. Maybe the accountability is that retirement budget that you work on, and looking at your financial plan and how your investments are doing, and begin to set a date, and then you're working towards that date, and your financial planner is helping you stay accountable by working with you on your numbers. So set a timeline, set up some to-do items and tasks. Acknowledge retiring attorneys' efforts. If you're in a small firm and you see them doing things that are positive, they're transitioning those client relationships, they're beginning to work on their to-do items, they've actually set a date, you know, encourage them and support them as they go through those pieces of the project, because it's hard and it is emotional and it's fraught with stress and anxiety. So encouraging them in every way that we can is an important piece of the puzzle.
And so I'm not sure what my polling issue is, but so and this is something that I want you to think about. When you're advising, or you yourself are thinking about retirement, what obstacles are you seeing your clients face? Is it that they are not mentally prepared, financially prepared? What are the issues that are creeping up for them? Because I think as an advisor, or you yourself, you can start planning and thinking about those situations as well too. And so I think, when we were talking about this, is you need to think, if you yourself are the business owner or the law firm owner, or you're advising the law firm owners, is you need to have a team. It's important that you have a team that knows what they're doing, that is competent in their, or an expert in their field, and that they have these pieces in place. And so what I have found with a lot of my business owners and some of my law firm owners is there are gaps, and spots where key people are missing. And so, they may not have a financial advisor who's been advising the business, or they may not have a CPA who's familiar with that, or a consultant, or a life insurance agent, or an insurance agent who can do those things, or somebody, like David Hearn is on here, but like a valuation specialist. You need to know what these numbers are so that you can start planning a model ahead of time. And like we said before, this is definitely a process. Valuation takes time. And so evaluation is, hiring somebody who specializes in that to figure out, what is your firm really worth? What are, what you can do if you find out year one, you want to retire in 5 years, and you find out in year one, after, starting to plant the seeds and starting to do those things, that your law firm is valued at $750,000. You still have time and on your side so that you can build up that value. And that might mean hiring a consultant like Camille, or investing in and working with a financial advisor, or building the value so that in year 5, when you really do want to retire, that you've got all of those processes and procedures in place. Anything you want to add to that, Camille?
So other people that I think are good for the team, it could be your spouse, your partner, your adult children. Having them on board with your retirement plan is really important. And I will tell you, I work with lawyers, and we are months into working together, and they will tell me that they still haven't talked about retirement with their family because they know they're going to get pushback. So, having those close people on the team is important as well. And figuring out how to have those conversations can be challenging, but it's something that you need to do. Also, it might be having someone like, a spiritual advisor, your clergy, a mental health professional to get through some of those emotional pieces. Maybe talking to friends who've already been through retirement. How did they do it? How successful did they feel? What challenges did they face? You might need a business lawyer, someone like Cherish, who can help you with the buy-sell documents, with the negotiation of the buy-sell of the practice, having someone like the insurance person. So there are a lot of people that I think could make this journey better for you. I think it seems daunting, and one of the reasons it seems daunting is because we look at it as a very personal decision and a personal choice that we will have to do alone. And I think the idea of creating a team is just to let you know you don't have to do it alone. There are a lot of people that can help you through this process.
And so this is, we're wrapping up here. And so, start to think about questions that you may want to ask Camille or myself. But really what you want to do from an estate planning perspective is you want to make sure everything is coordinated. You need to have a holistic approach to your business and to your life plan. And what I have seen in a lot of cases, or some cases, is that the two are never ticked and tied. So, somebody may have a buy-sell agreement in theory, but it's never coordinated with their estate plan. Or they may have a buy-sell agreement contractually, but it's never funded. And so those become real issues later on when a life event happens, and such as, death. And so that is one thing that, as part of, yourself or as an advisor to these businesses, in making sure that everything is ticked and tied. The last thing that you want to do, if you have been an advisor to this business for a while, is that, explain to their family why they're not getting the value, or why they never had that life insurance, which would fund the interest of their business. And so that is something that is really, really important. And so we are going to send you this, but these are some of the resources. And I know that we're running short on time, so we're going to open it up. But see, here are some of the key takeaways. You want to plan as early as possible. And think of it like a garden. You want to sow the seeds and make sure that you are starting to have those conversations with your family members, and that you're getting help and doing your research now. do the research now. I mean, whether it's Googling, whether it's reaching out to Camille or I, picking somebody's brain to make that transition easier. And then also really figuring out who the right advisors are. Who are they who are the best people to work with? Sometimes it's a personality thing, sometimes it's an expertise, but having the right advisors will guarantee your success. And sometimes you have to go through several advisors so that that transition will be very comfortable for you. So we are going to open it up for any questions.
David, thanks for your comment about a life coach, because I think that's a great point to make. Life coaches, consultants, who are equipped to help people kind of figure out what to do next. Because I do think you're right. A lot of business owners just aren't ready to take the next step. They have been so invested in what they've done that they struggle with what the next step looks like. So that's a good point.
And so, Camille, one of the questions that has come across was, how do you, from a practical level, what are some ideas? So if we're looking at, an older partner who's around retirement age, what can they do, or if they're thinking about retirement, what are some key practical steps that they can take today? So just, maybe 3 that they can do, that they can start implementing today, and that wouldn't be, overwhelming for them.
So I think just starting to come up with a time frame is worth a little bit of exercise. And so sort of look at your client. If you're a litigator, you've got, a caseload. If you're a business lawyer, you've probably got these ongoing client relationships. And, where are they in process? And how long do you want to continue doing this? So, let's say you just took on a new litigation matter this week, and it's probably going to be 5 years before that case is over. So you're not just thinking about how I feel today and next month, but I just took on a 5-year commitment. And if I continue to take on 3 to 5 year commitments for the next 3 to 5 years, I'm working for the next 10 years. Is that where I want to be? So take a little bit of reflection and look at your workload and how long do you want to do this? I think a next key is, who's going to do it if it's not me? Great, Camille. You've just, told me to think about who's going to, that I might not want to try cases 10 years from now, but who's going to do that? So begin to think about what your successor looks like. Is it someone in your firm? Are you a part of a small firm? Are you a solo owner, but you have other associates working for you? Are those the people that you want to transition to? And if the answer is yes, start taking some steps to see if those people are interested in being the next generation owner. Take them to lunch. Don't walk into their office when you get off the phone and say, hey, do you want to buy this law firm? You're probably going to freak them out, and you probably don't have all the information you need to offer your law firm for sale. But take them to lunch and start talking about the future and what the future might look like. And then begin to think about who your team of advisors is going to be and start conversations with them. If you've got a CPA or a financial planner already that you do work with, schedule a meeting. Call them today and schedule a meeting to just start talking about the future. I think those would be 3 things that you could do today that would set you up well to be planning for a retirement that could happen as soon as a year or 18 months from now, or could happen 5 to 7 years from now.
Awesome. Well, Thank you. Camille, do we have any other questions? I think I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but thank you so much for joining us today. And we will be recording this and sending out a survey. And if you, we will also be sending the slides from Camille's deck in terms of the resources. And please feel free to view us as a resource. And if you want to share this recording, it's going to be on my YouTube channel, and then we will send you the link to it so that you can potentially share it with your clients or other business owners that may need this help. I think the process is applicable to law firms and to all the small businesses. So thank you, Camille. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thanks. It was great to spend time with you today, Cherish, and to meet a lot of new folks today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Take care.